Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 215. It is a Wednesday night, April 12th, 2023. We are powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors, family owned and operated for more than 2 decades. Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue in Berry Hill. Give them a call at 615-356-0303 or log on to alacofinewoodfloors.com. Will Byram, Trevor Hewlin, all accounted for. We'll have Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show on a little bit later to preview the big series this weekend, Vandy and South Carolina, top 10 matchup, arguably the two best teams in the SEC right now, according to Saturday Down South Power Rankings. So we'll preview that. We'll talk about our appearance at the spring game. A bunch of goons in the stands. I don't know if any of you guys saw us, but we were there. Stackhouse rumors, a lot of NBA buzz. As always, the basketball program continues to boggle the mind. So we will dive into that. Mazerei, is that it, Will? Is it Adam Mazerei?
Adam Mazerei. I was just going to call him Adam. Just okay. To not. Yeah, I think it's Mazerei sounds better.
Mazerei sounds better. Yeah, so he is headed to Cal. So
all-time great photo of him on Twitter.
Yep. Goodbye, my sweet prince. So Adam Mazerei is headed to Cal, and we'll talk about that. And of course, we'll preview South Carolina. But boys, spring game is over and done with. I don't know that we can take anything out of it other than Cedric Alexander. Well, the kid looks pretty good.
Cedric Alexander looks good. Taylor looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback this fall. Obviously, if you take away just the spring game performance. But yeah, we were a bunch of goons up in the stadium. Shout out just overall to the Vanderbilt athletics department for at least putting on what appeared to be just a good spring game environment in a situation that I'm sure is not ideal, with your stadium literally sitting about, 20% rubble right now at this point. So yeah, so they did a good job of setting up in some not great circumstances. They had a bunch of fair rides set up, like mini fair rides, a bunch of food. I got some Hattie B's hot chicken.
I saw you on one of the rides. Will,
me and Trevor pounded. Yeah, I opened up and me and my dad were like, we're just gonna wait in line, and they're gonna be like, where are your kids? And we're gonna be like, no kids, it's just us. But me and Trevor were also pounding some brews up in the stands and taking
some beers and daddy dogs.
Yeah, the ultimate tease of all of sports, which is college football spring games. Because anything done well by the offense, you can just say was a mistake or an issue on the defensive side. Anything done well on the defensive side, you can immediately just say the offense didn't play well. The play calling was vanilla. So ultimately, you can spin the performances seen in whatever direction you want to, which is what makes it incredible for the Dog Days and Talking season. But Trevor, I know you enjoyed yourself at the spring game. We were definitely yelling, and you even got Coach Lee's attention at one point, yelling at him. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. And he pointed up at us. So that
Billy, were you not there for that?
Billy.
I left.
No, Billy and Ditch.
Oh, Billy!
Yep. That was just me and you yelling.
So Coach Lee at halftime, or what's supposed to be halftime, gets on the mic and he's at the 50 and he's giving his little spiel, like, "Hey, thanks for all the fans for coming up." And he's walking towards us, and I just yell. Something came over me, and I just go, "Coach Lee, I love you." And then it's just screaming. We're like, "Ah!" And then he gave us a little point. He just pointed in our direction and gave us a fist bump. And then whenever we got that little bit of acknowledgement, our little section just erupted. He cracked a little smile. It was awesome. I also have Jordan Matthews, Vanderbilt football legend, if he has any eligibility left. Breaking news, he does not. I told him that he could get a COVID year. He said he would try, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, J-Matt was seated directly in the same section as us. I think Jay Woods
maybe
was there
3
as well.
feet
Oren
away.
Burks. Yeah, and
unintentional.
There was also another former Vanderbilt athlete at the spring game.
God.
I know we're still in the intro portion here, Billy, but I know this was
we will reveal
probably
who we
as much
saw.
as the action on the field, but there was an interesting former Vanderbilt player in it.
Who is that? Another SEC school we will not name. We'll basically give the tease. It's either Mike Wright or Ray Davis, so you guys can guess who it is.
Or McAllister, or Elijah McAllister,
or Elijah McAllister at Auburn. Yep, forgot about him. So we'll give that little tease and we'll reveal that.
Gabe Judy Lawley at Tennessee.
Oh my goodness, man! The within conference transfers. Trevor knows them. The insider. He also got Robbie Weinstein, the real insider's attention.
I did. Robbie, we're just chanting Robbie. We're like, Robbie. And he just turns around. He goes, and he gives us one of these.
Classic. Love it.
I was asking him for a scoop, Robbie. And he didn't give me any. Hashtag thanks, Robbie.
So we got the spring game to talk about. We got Stackhouse rumors, NBA buzz. Will he go to the Pistons? Will he stay in Nashville? Still no one from the portal headed to Vanderbilt, which is kind of mind-boggling, as Will brought up last episode. And we'll talk South Carolina this weekend. Before we do, though, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @door_report and Instagram, door.report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and review on iTunes. All right, let's get to the breaking news. All right, guys, first piece of breaking news, I'm going to give it off to Trevor. And he already told us the news. He told Will and I the news. And Trevor, I don't even think you've told anybody the steps that it's taken to get to this point. So give the background to the Vandy faithful and let them know of the latest life news of Trevor Hulen.
Yes. So the only people who know are currently are my mother and father, my pastor and his wife, my best friend, and my 2 co-hosts, Billy and Will. But yeah, a couple months ago, I applied for graduate school at Vanderbilt University, just as a little shot in the wind, just as a little tickle. Let's see what they do. And about 30 minutes ago, I'm happy to announce that I received a phone call, and that I have been admitted into Vanderbilt University to get my master's. So it is a dream come true, and I'm very, very excited. I cried on the way home.
Wow. No words there, Will.
Yeah.
Trevor, I was clapping there. My immediate response was congratulations, Trevor. And now one of the main criticisms of this podcast, which was me, Trevor, and Billy had not attended Vanderbilt University. Well, that's a tough criticism to give now, so suck it, University.
This is to all the haters out there. The haters and losers, of which there are many, are sad. It's Trevor, over. Yeah, chop them.
You've got to make it longer than a few weeks. We've got to get there. We've got to get you with that degree. I'm sure you will.
We do. Yes, I gotta get in. I'm accepted, but I've got to step foot in class first. But we're one step closer, baby. We've been accepted.
We talk about the other insiders out there. You know, Chris Lee, Robbie Weinstein. They do a great job. Who else? Joey Dwyer. We could say we have an insider of our own now, Trevor Hulen, as a student, not just a student, a grad student. So he is there amongst the student athletes. What insight we're going to be able to get from Trevor Hulen, breaking the news. You might be breaking news. You might
befriend some of the athletes we cheer for. Who knows?
You might see Miles Keefe in whatever class you're in, and Miles might say, "Hey, yeah, I'm getting the start tonight." In Tuscaloosa, you know, so
in between classes, instead of doing my schoolwork, I'm going to be like, I might stop over at Coach Lee's office at McCook.
Just so everybody knows, Trevor told me and Billy like 30 seconds before we started recording this. And
this is still raw.
The more I've been thinking about this, like obviously first response.
It's perfect.
To Trevor, awesome. This is a step beyond awesome. This is like the ways this can go, and just Trevor being a Commodore, being a Vanderbilt student, that just brings joy to my heart.
It just
Who
fits.
Who would have thought, boys? Who would have thought?
You're going to fit like a glove, Trev. You're going to love it. And there's probably students that know who you are. They may not know the face, but they've seen Hack Squad Jim Duggan on Twitter. So congrats, Trevor. We're happy for you. And go in there, attack, win the day over there. First
win. I'll what's the Commodore creed? I'll win with humility and lose with grace. I think that's it.
That's all you need. That's all you need right there.
I'll read the Commodore Creed before every class.
Well, the Commodore Creed was read by Coach Lee and Bobby Johnson. Coach Lee played for Bobby Johnson, and Coach Lee's team had the spring game this past weekend. Guys, we won't spend too much time on it. Let's face it, there's not a whole lot that we learned, but we did learn a little bit. And for me, obviously, Cedric Alexander, talked about him, Will. AJ Swan was AJ Swan. Nothing really, I guess, stood out from AJ. He continued to play well. For me, though, it's how much better, and I didn't think the defense could get much better or be much better, but obviously there's room for improvement, but they look legit. Like there's speed, there's more depth, they're big. It looks like the freshman guys in the secondary have gotten bigger, and they're more, I guess, adept at their craft, and it just looks like the defense looks smooth. And I know it's a spring game and you can't take a whole lot out of it, but man, Will, it feels to me like the young guys have done a good job of taking what Coach Lee has said and be ready to play, because I mean, they're going to have to be ready to play. I was looking at Trudell Berry, Gaskins, other guys like a John House, Langston Patterson. Those younger guys, they look ready. Last year they didn't. They didn't play much. Langston on special teams, but well, I think we can say now that secondary and that front seven is better. Not that they were awful last year, but they've gotten even better. And a lot of those younger guys, I think, are ready to play.
Yeah, I think the one thing you can definitively take away from the spring game, and maybe this is the gold-colored lenses on my glasses I was wearing, but this team is better. They are bigger, faster, and more athletic across the board. Just the median player on this roster standing on the sidelines looks bigger and stronger than 2 years ago. And that just feels undeniable to me. I mean, Babst, regardless, number 96, looks like an absolute physical specimen. Number 98, I'm not going to say his name because I'm going to butcher it, from Germany, as a sophomore, is an absolute...
Number 5 now.
Yeah, number 5 now, an absolute physical specimen on the sideline. They both immediately stick out. But yeah, you said AJ Swan was AJ Swan. The one thing on the offensive side that really stuck out to me was maybe one of the worst unsportsmanlike conduct calls in a spring game from an SEC referee that I have ever seen. The SEC referees were in full form. If you did not watch the spring game, I'll give you a quick recap of this unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Quincy Skinner Jr. in a spring game against his teammates on defense caught like an 80-yard touchdown up the sideline, and at about the 10 or 15-yard line put up the Tyreek Hill deuces, the peace sign, for like 0.2 seconds on the sideline. It was not a long, extended, crazy celebration backflip into the end zone. It was very casual. And the SEC referee crew, I'm assuming it was, threw a flag, called back the touchdown, and a 15-yard penalty, and the offense had to continue to play that possession. So that was one of the most disheartening penalties I've ever seen, because I get it, man. Maybe they are going to call that in the fall, and you want the players to be prepared for how potentially these horrendous referees are going to officiate the game. But come on, man. Like, it was not that bad. And it's the equivalent. No. It's the equivalent of a practice. And you're really going to call that and take away that highlight scoring play from him. So now no longer can the marketing crew for Vanderbilt football post that as a true highlight play that was probably the best and biggest highlight play of the entire day. So that was ruined by the referee crew during the spring game. So that was
I did see though, Truman McDaniel posted the picture of Quincy doing the peace
such
sign.
A good photo.
Oh, dude.
So good.
And I think Quincy might have put it on his Instagram or Twitter or one of those, but I thought that was funny.
Also, too, I'll say this. I told Billy this at the spring game. Truman, if you listen to this, I have DM'd you multiple times. I am willing to pay you for your work if you can like print it for me. Like, there are photos of yours that I will pay good money for to get prints of so I can hang up. So if you see this, I don't know how you see this, but don't see your DMs. But if you do see this, I will pay you money for those photos. So just a heads up, I want the Quincy Skinner deuce. And I want the tie. I want the tie. I want the tie shot, and I want the Quincy deuce. That's what I want.
So, Will, was that the end of your spiel there on the spring game? I personally don't
I know we're on a
but...
time limit here, and I know you said that you didn't have a large takeaway.
Gotcha.
I could talk about the spring game for like 2 hours if you actually
Darren
let me
Agu made a
get
couple of
into
good
it.
plays.
Like this is my bread and butter. There were actually a lot of takeaways that I had from the spring game. Which
we'll save them.
Like,
we'll save them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into them now because we do have a pretty big guest upcoming.
Oh yeah, we've got a guest coming up, Chris Phillips. We will talk more about this spring game again. Not a ton to take away, but there were takeaways, and we'll probably dedicate another pod down the road to the spring game and spring as a whole. And obviously, we've got time. We've got plenty of time before the season. Will,
I just don't want you to forget about what we teased in the intro.
Oh,
about,
okay.
About what former player is there. I wanted to leave time for that.
I first saw him sitting with my brother. And, we were kind of towards the right side of, towards the middle. I know you guys were on the left side of the stands at the Plex. But I looked down and I see Michael Owusu and Anthony, and, they dap up, they say, "What's up?" And then to the right, peeking his head out. And I knew it was him right away. You can tell by the head, the hair, that was Ray Davis. And I couldn't believe it at first. I was like, because after it went down, we had talked about that. Is there going to be bad blood? Is there not? I was surprised to see him, but it was Ray Davis down there. And then I moved over to the left side with you guys, and he was still over there. So any rumors of the bad blood, I guess, directly with the team might have been disputed there with Ray Davis in attendance. I was surprised, but then again,
I'm kind of curious, like your emotions, Billy and Trevor, on it. But I was more just like, I didn't like, it's whatever to me. But it was so weird. Like that's the best, weird, only reaction that I had to it was like, what in the hell is Ray Davis doing here? Like it was just odd. Not that Vanderbilt football shouldn't have him there or that he doesn't have relationships with any of the players, but I thought that was just something that was like mutually understood, that if you were playing for one team and transfer to another team within the same conference, that you're no longer like going to attend their practices and games, even if you are finishing out whatever's going on. Or if you happen to be in Nashville. Like, that's just so weird to me. Like, that would raise heads if it was like a high school player coming to a random spring game or spring practice. Like, people in the community would be like, what the hell is he doing? He just transferred to our rival across the county. So it was just weird. And Trevor, I know you had some raw emotions.
Yes, I had some raw emotions. I didn't originally see him, but Braden McPherson came over and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "over by Michael Owusu is Ray Davis," and I was like, "What?" And I just like Bill, I look over because he was to my left. I look over to my left, and I'm like, how is he here? Like, at first I was like, how is he even allowed to be here? Like, I don't. Like, but then I was like, okay, it is a spring game. It is televised on SEC Network. This isn't like a practice to where they're like filming plays. But I also was like, is Kentucky on like spring break? Like, how is
That's what I was confused about.
Like, we're in the middle of like spring ball is a very, very like important formative process in like the college football season. And it's a Saturday in the spring. Like, do y'all not have practice? Like, I don't like how are you here? Like, I don't I didn't.
That's what confused
me.
Also,
like, why? Like, and the whole bad blood thing. I don't know. CJ Taylor's tweets to him make it seem like there might be some bad blood because they've definitely circled the Kentucky game. So
I think naturally there will be, right? Like,
I think naturally too, because just like even if like they're still like buddies. It's
not like I will never
alphas.
See you again.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the game to where you have a bunch of alphas out there, and so like naturally that's going to heighten the rivalry a little bit. But my thing is just like how like do you not have practice? Like, I don't like, why are you here? Like, I don't get it.
Maybe they were on spring break, whatever it is.
But do you not practice spring ball during spring break?
No.
Or am I making that up?
Not on a Saturday too. Being a Saturday, I think that's
usually
a little bit understandable. Yeah,
no,
so Ray Davis,
hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's the part, Trevor, is like, I don't care what's said publicly or what's acceptable to say or what guys have said. This discussion of if there is, Like, yes, there is. Like, it is driving me crazy. If a guy transfers away from your team and I am still on that team, it's not that I hate that person, but I'm going to be like, dude, like, you just kind of screwed me over. You were supposed to have my back no matter what. You were supposed to be my teammate. And there was a little bit better of an offer maybe, and you just were out the door. So all that was bullshit. Like, that's your natural thought process when your teammate leaves to go play for a conference rival.
You saw it when we played Alabama this year with Tyler Steen, and he seems like I'm sure whenever we play Auburn, like Elijah McAllister, like I have no ill will towards him. Like, he seems like a great guy. He was a captain. They obviously loved him, but that's just the nature of the game that, like, when Vanderbilt plays Auburn this year, like, it's going to be chippy. Like, they are going to jaw with one another. Like, it's just how the sport goes.
You need bad blood. You want there to be bad blood, right? So that when Vandy plays Kentucky, that's going to be fun. Also, shout out to Brian Carlson. He immediately, when he saw Ray Davis, he said, "Why is Ray Davis here?" on Twitter. He posted on Twitter. I thought that was hilarious. But that's the TDR pride. Okay, real quick here. We've got a few minutes. I know we'd like to spend a little bit more time on this, but Jerry Stackhouse, he is being rumored to have interest in the Detroit Pistons job. Not a surprise. Now, is he begging and pleading Detroit to go up there and coach? I don't know. Does he have some interest? Yeah, I mean, naturally, right? I mean, you would expect that. But the bigger news, I think, now, guys, is number one, still no transfer players into the program. Number two, the top assistant coach, Adam Mazerei, is headed to Cal. I would assume a pay raise. Vandy staff is paid very well, by the way, I've heard. So that's impressive, actually. But Adam Mazerei, I don't know if I'm going to say the dominoes are starting to fall, but that's what it feels like, right? Like 6 players enter the portal. That's a domino. No players have entered. That's a domino. No, that's insane, right? And then number 3, Mazerei, the top assistant that has helped a lot, has won games, right, with his scouting reports, is gone. So real quick, guys, why do you think Mazerei left? I mean, was that a pay raise? And what impact does it have? Does that play into your, that means Stack might really have interest, or not at all?
I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. This further confuses me because Mazerei, clearly key assistant to Jerry Stackhouse, been with him all 4 years when he's been at Vanderbilt. And now he's basically taking what feels to me like a neutral move. Even if there is a slight pay raise, I mean, maybe you go into coaching for the money, but my idea is you go for career progression and you want to coach at a higher level, and taking an assistant coach position at a different program, also kind of, middle of the pack in their conference in Cal. That's an odd move to me. But still, you hit on it, Billy. Focusing on the coaching move, whatever, that's just a tiny little symptom. Focusing on the transfer portal. Had 6 guys out, 0 guys in. Another SEC program. I don't remember who I was talking to that pointed it out, but Florida had 5 guys, I believe, enter the transfer portal. They've had 4 transfer in. So the alarm bells are not ringing there the same way. So it's not necessarily the number of guys that have entered the portal alone, or the assistant coach movement by itself, but a combo of those two things, like you said, Billy, and 0 guys coming into the program, and then an assistant coach that clearly likes coaching with Jerry Stackhouse is gone. You would think that if Jerry Stackhouse thought he would potentially be the head coach of the NBA's Detroit Pistons, that Mazerei would stick around and Stack would take him with him if he was to take the NBA head coaching job, because Mazerei has experience. I believe he coached 6 years in the Memphis Grizzlies organization, with Stackhouse as well. Mm-hmm. So that makes less and less sense to me as you continue to drill down into it, because the initial take is just like, oh, Stack's, going to be gone or leaving. But when you really dig into it, Stack, he would probably have gone with Stack wherever he would go if that relationship was still good, and Stack really was expecting to get that job. So that's as quick and succinct as that take, is I have no idea what the hell is going on.
I totally agree with Will's take. That's my take. Absolutely. The only thing I kind of have to contribute is sort of a little what if for you guys and the listeners. I don't have the answer to this. I would actually really love to know what you guys are like people on the internet or the listeners have to think about this. It very much seems like Jerry wants to go to Detroit. If Jerry gets offered the job, I think it's a foregone conclusion that he's gone. It is what it is. If he does take the job, timing right now is awful to where it's so
awful.
late. Like
it's
the
brutal.
coaching search is so bad. But here's really what I want to focus on. If he doesn't get the job, so he's still coaching at Vanderbilt, how does the future play out with you now have a coach who is using you as a stepping stone? So how does that look like to the brass? How does that look like to the current players? How does it look like to the recruits? And like if you're Jerry or the coaching staff, like how do you go into a kid's living room and tell his mom that you want him to come to Vanderbilt when, like, as long as he has a Twitter, like he knows you want to go coach to the NBA? So even if he stays, I don't want to say it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't, but that's kind of what it feels like. And I would love to hear other people's takes on it because that's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot, right? Like my mind is still blown by this program, right? Like the roller coaster continues. I mean, 6 players in the portal, nobody has come in. Will, you just mentioned Florida. They had 5. They've already brought 4 guys in, right? So I don't even think we're talking about that enough, right? I mean, I posted that clip of you talking about it, Will, right? But it just feels like there's not enough attention on that. Oh, also your top assistant is gone. Right? Your coach is being rumored for the Pistons job. It just feels like everything is connected, and I'm trying not to go there, but it's hard not to. Right? Yep. Like it's
very easy to have the dumb take of, 6 guys entered the transfer portal. Well, everyone has a bunch of guys entering the transfer portal. That's modern college basketball. I don't have any problem with that. I think we've tried to make that clear. It's like the guys they've lost to the portal is not where we view the issue. The issue is the not bringing them in. That part is not normal. Other teams do not have 0.
A week and a half, 2 weeks?
Yeah, other guys do not have 0 guys committed in as transfers. They just don't. So especially ones that have lost the number that Vanderbilt has, which I'm not sure if there is another SEC school that has more. I think Florida, they were tied with the most transfers.
Yeah, they had the most.
QMB entered his name. So Vanderbilt not only has the most, they have at best case tied for the least transfers in the conference. So that's not normal. Not normal.
It's not. You need players. That's a big key to having success at the college level. Need some players. Also, meanwhile, Chris Mack has been seen on Twitter with Vanderbilt shirts and sweatshirts. So I think that's interesting.
His daughter's already going to Vanderbilt. Like,
I don't think anything, like if Stack, like you said, if he goes to Detroit, I don't think Chris Mack would be the guy, but we got to start thinking about that. I mean, that just feels like the direction this train is rolling, a coaching change. I could be totally wrong, right?
Late one before. A very late one.
And that's why I'm torn because I my gut tells me, no, he's not going anywhere. But my brain and my like visual senses say, look at him. I mean, of course he's going, so
Look, conundrum. This is the only part. I know the gambling odds had him as the 3rd most likely guy to go to the Detroit Pistons. He played on the Pistons during his NBA career, probably had his best years on the Detroit Pistons. So I get all that. However, Jerry Stackhouse's personality does not scream to me a personality of an NBA coach, regardless of all the articles that I've read about his, X's and O's ability. And really at the end of the day, maybe his coaching style of like his skill set is geared more towards the NBA. But his personality is not. The idea of like a benevolent dictatorship, that quote from midseason of Vanderbilt basketball.
I don't think that would fly with
that will
veterans.
Not fly. No, that will not fly in the NBA. The NBA, probably the head coach of an NBA team is the least impactful head coach of any professional.
They would laugh at him if he said that.
And so I think you're more there. And this is probably best for Stack's skill set. But like what you're doing is situationally drawing up plays out of timeouts, making strategic decisions like that. But I don't know if Stack's personality to me comes off as a guy that's willing to like take his hands off of everything and just basically let the inmates run the prison, which is kind of like what the NBA and
that's what it is.
Professional athletics is more geared towards. It's more of a player league. versus college is a team league and a coach and a coach league. So it's just going to be a personality clash, and we'll see how this plays out.
We shall see. Again, we will spend more time on Stack, the spring game, spring football, but we've got baseball to talk about. Vanderbilt and South Carolina coming up this weekend. Top 10 matchup at Hawkins Field, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We will talk all about it with Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show coming up next here on the Door Report. Chris Phillips, founder of the Spurs Up Show, does a great job. Best Gamecocks coverage on the internet. If you're a Gamecock fan, they've got a podcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The Daily Crow, daily show live from 12 to 2, Monday through Friday, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So Chris Phillips does it all for Gamecock Nation. And Chris is joining us now ahead of this weekend series, Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Top 10 matchup. Chris, Saturday Down South put up their latest power rankings. Vanderbilt number 1 and the Gamecocks number 2. This should be a fun weekend, my man.
Well, boys, first things first, I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate the kind words. It's always a pleasure to chat with you guys. And, I tell people, believe it or not, there are Vanderbilt fans that are just as passionate as we are about the Gamecocks. And the Door Report is living proof of that. So I want everybody to know and pay respect and put some respect on the Star V out there, right? So, no, I appreciate you, man. It's always a pleasure, like I said, to chat with you, and especially, man, talking Gamecocks and Doors on the diamond, especially when South Carolina and Vandy are having the type of seasons they are, man. It just feels right, man. It feels like this is what this series is supposed to be about, 4 versus 6, and like you mentioned, the Saturday Down South rankings, and it really speaks for itself what these ball clubs have done to this point for sure. So excited for it, man. It'll be a fun one in Asheville, and again, looking forward to a great weekend of SEC baseball yet again.
Chris, I don't know if you're as surprised as I am. I know Trevor's a big baseball guy as well. Will is as well. I'm surprised. I'm stunned to see how good this Gamecock team is and how Mark Kingston has really turned it around. I mean, he gathered the troops and said, there were people coming out for his job last year. I mean, I see your coverage. Y'all weren't happy with him, deservedly so. I mean, South Carolina is a national brand. They should be a top 10 team every year. So, number one, how surprised are you that he's been able to turn things around this quick? Because last year they weren't, I guess, awful, but they weren't at the standard of Gamecock baseball. So how has he turned things around and sort of saved his job?
Well, Billy, first things first, since we're talking about surprises in the SEC East, I'm sure all of you guys are just heartbroken to see the poor start of the Tennessee Volunteers, because I think everybody had them as their SEC darling and picking them to go toe-to-toe with LSU. So I'm sure you guys are heartbroken to see that.
Yeah, it really – it's a bummer seeing that, man. It's awful.
Yeah,
I feel for him up there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no doubt. We all do. But no, man, speaking with the Gamecocks, it's, listen, I expected this ball to come back to last year. Like you mentioned, last year was a nightmarish type of season, right? It just felt like everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. All of the injuries that hit the pitching staff, really the entire ball club, you couldn't hit to save your life. And it just felt like that was sort of the mantra of the Kingston era, right? Just not able to hit consistently enough to win in the SEC. Coming into this year, I had them at 34-22 and 15-15 in the league. To give you some perspective, the Gamecocks will enter this weekend with 29 wins. So, long story short, I didn't see this coming. I think anybody, even the most optimistic Gamecock fan, if you said you saw this coming, you're lying, right? Just in regards to one of the best starts in school history, the way you started SEC play, crushing everybody in the non-conference. I really felt like because of the guys they picked up through the transfer portal and guys being a year older, right? Those guys that were thrust in the lineup as freshmen that were now sophomores this year, guys that returned from injury on the pitching staff. I thought this team would be better, and I felt like they had the pieces and the talent to win, and if they didn't, it would come down to coaching. Now, you were right. We were very tough on Kingston a year ago, and deservedly so, right? I don't think anybody apologizes for that because of that season. I mean, you go below 500, right? You made history in the worst kind of ways. But do give Mark Kingston credit, right? He went out, he got Monte Lee, which I think that really went under the radar just in regards of the ego death that it takes to put the ego to the side and bring in a guy that's also been a head coach, and he's been a coach at the university that you're the head coach at, right? He was with the Gamecocks and the Ray Tanner, and to bring in a different voice and a different mindset and sort of let him take over the hitting side of things, acknowledging that's your weakness, right? And handing that over to someone else. Also, you got to give Kingston credit for going out to the portal and actually getting the guys like the Will McGillises, like the Caleb Denny's, like the Gavin Casases, who I know we're going to talk about that you all are so familiar with. He went out and he got those guys. And then you had guys like Noah Hall, like Braylon Wimmer, like James Hicks that all turned down money to go to the MLB draft and came back because they said they felt like they had unfinished business. And you just don't have guys like that returning to your program if the culture isn't pretty damn good, right? Those guys are going to get out if things are not good internally. So you do have to give Mark Kingston a lot of credit. I was one, Billy, I'll just say this. I want to win more than I want a new head coach, right? It was never in the sense of anybody had any. I can only speak for myself. I never had any personal vendetta against Mark Kingston or he personally did something to me. I just want to see, and what we all want to see, the South Carolina baseball be what it's supposed to be, which you're not going to be this good every year, but be in the postseason, be hosting regional, similar to what Vandy fans have expectations and Florida fans and, et cetera, right? All of us that have great baseball tradition and history. So, again, though, long story short, I mean, nobody saw this coming, man. This type of start to see South Carolina ranked 6th right now. And, I said this about a week ago to the date when South Carolina blasted LSU in game 1. I just felt like I told myself, I was like, dude, this is a dream. Like, I'm scared I'm going to wake up because this does not feel real. Like the way this season is going. Like I'll tell you this, by the way, and I hate to phrase it this way, not to give you guys some extra juice ahead of the weekend, but this Gamecocks team, like watching them in the regular season, they feel like the Tennessee of last year, like to a degree. Maybe they're not as hateable.
All right, good to talk to you, Chris. This is over.
Yeah, get him off the pod.
Well, we're not as hateable as they are because I mean anybody who has Tony Vitello as their head coach is going to be like the most hated team in college baseball. But just like the way this team is winning and they're finding ways to win, and they're sort of that darling that come out of nowhere surprise team, if you will. Like it is similar to that. Hopefully, I hope there are a lot of differences. I obviously hope there's a lot of differences, especially with the way their season ended. But no, it's been an incredible ride, man, and excited to see if South Carolina can keep this going and maybe push to win the SEC East, which would be an absolutely incredible feat.
Yeah, I mean, leading the country in home runs, 76 home runs. I mean, maybe they're pretty similar to Tennessee, juicing the back.
I was going to say,
I'll say this. Here's a better comparison. Let's not compare them to the evil Tennessee team from a year ago, but this really feels like the old school Ray Tanner Basher teams. Like that's really what it feels like, man. Where they had Smoke, Disher, Darnell Havens, the Murderers Row teams, if you will. What's funny is it doesn't feel like the 10, 11, 12 teams under Tanner that were all about, they had some power, but a lot of small ball and hit and run and, again, find ways to win. But, I mean, this team just – they're big, they're bashers, they're powerful, they hit home runs. Granted, it's not just feast or famine like teams we've seen in the past, but, dude, it's just a lot of fun to watch, man. You got a bunch of big, strong hitters that are disciplined and they make you work. And, again, those guys you brought up in the portal, man, they're just absolutely crushing. So it's been a lot of fun. And the pitching depth is incredible, right? We talked about that, too, off air. The pitching depth, we knew that was the strength of the ball club. And if the hitting was there, this team had a chance to be really special. And sure enough, here we are.
You mentioned Monte Lee from Clemson. Of course, he was let go. They brought in Eric Bakich, a guy who was formerly on the Vanderbilt staff. So there's already some familiarity there between Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and their staff. But another guy they brought in, Gavin Casas, you just brought him up. He's raked this season. 15 home runs, right? Tied with Petry right now. Again, that's something I can't say I expected to see out of him because last year he was banged up, I think, towards the end of the season. Didn't get, I think, the playing time he wanted early on, and then he got hurt at Vanderbilt. So I think there's sort of a misconception with, he could be our first baseman right now. But Parker Nolan's also mashing pretty well right now at first for Vanderbilt. So it worked out for Casas. How big of a help has he been? And again, did you see this coming? Because I can't say I did.
Yeah, Casas has been a little bit cold of late, but as a whole, right, the body of work, I mean, he's been a huge addition to this lineup, right in the middle there. And, they rolled the dice, I guess you could say. They took a risk, if you will, but they needed to add a big power lefty bat. And I don't know if you've ever been, Billy, to Founders Park, any of you guys have, but, I mean, that is a left-handed hitter's paradise because it's a short porch already. And the river is out past left field. So the wind comes off that river and it normally blows out to right field. So, I mean, a guy like Casas, I mean, it is literally just peppering the ball over the right field fence. And, again, it's one of those things where I thought he would have a good season. I thought he'd be a double-digit home run guy. I didn't know he'd be quite this good, right? And, again, I know he's been a little bit cold of late, but the good news this lineup is it is so deep and so many guys are having success that if one goes into a lull, you got others to pick them up, right? Ethan Petry is the man that nobody can get out right now. I mean, saying he's the best freshman in college baseball is just the most no-brainer statement in the world, at least right now it feels like. So, but I will say this, that's a fascinating storyline going to the weekend because, it doesn't sound like you mentioned, I think it worked out well for all parties. Parker Nolan is an absolute stud with the Commodores, and Casas gets to up and leave and find a new home, if you will. So I don't think there's necessarily like bad blood, if you will, but you got to think there's a bit of some extra juice in the chip on the shoulder. I mean, anytime you go back to the old school and, you kind of want to prove like, maybe you make up the storyline in your head, like you guys slept on me, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to show you, but that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm sure it'll be cool for him, right? Because I'm sure all his buddies are on that Vandy team. And I'm sure he's got a great relationship with Tim Corbin and that entire coaching staff, if you will. So he's been a great addition to the lineup, man. I mean, just your typical big basher power hitter. Kind of reminds you, I was talking about those old lineups, kind of reminds you like a Justin Smoke, right? Just a big physical lefty that, can put it out on any given notice. I think he's a little bit more of the, dare I say, feast or famine type of approach. I think it was at one point, guys, his first 10 hits of the season, I think 8 of them were home runs. I think he was just.
It was ridiculous. It was a crazy start.
Every time he made contact, the ball was gone, right? So, he's your typical big power first baseman, DH, what have you, however they want to use him. But he's certainly been a big addition, and it's a great thing to have in that lineup, right? It's a weapon to have a guy like that can really change the complexion of the game with one swing of the bat.
We're getting y'all set for South Carolina Vandy this weekend at the Hawkins Field in Nashville. We're talking with Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show. Trevor, what you got for him?
Chris, once again, thank you for joining, brother. I want to talk about your offense a little bit. I don't want to focus too much on the pitching, but if, like you said with Ethan Petry, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's a no-brainer that he's the best freshman in the country. Just to rattle off his stats, he's slashing 449 at batting average, OBP of 507, slugging 898, has an OPS of 1.405. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. Looking on the offensive side of the South Carolina team, taking out Petry, who has to show up this weekend for South Carolina? Is it going to be a Talmadge? Is it going to be a Casas? Who has to show up? Because I think you could name off a ton of guys just looking through these stats. I mean, Petry's batting 499, LaCroix 315, Wimmer 313. I mean, Gavin Casas, like you said, a little bit of a cold streak, but still in the low 300s at 284. So taking out Petry, because as good as his Vanderbilt pitching staff is, I think he's going to get his. Just whenever you're a hitter like that and you're sort of in the zone, just kind of is what it is. You got to have to limit him. But other than him, who do you think has to have a great weekend for the South Carolina team?
Yeah, I'll go with two guys. You mentioned Braylon Wimmer. I feel like he's a bit of a glue guy for this team, a veteran presence, if you will. A lot of these guys, a good number of them actually have not been to Hawkins Field. I know it's not the most intimidating atmosphere in the world, but when you're taking on a Vandy at their place, it's a tough weekend. I mean, it just is flat out. So Vandy themselves, they make it tough no matter how many's in the crowd. Hey, a lot of them haven't experienced the Vanderbilt Whistler yet either, right? So that'll be a challenge.
The infamous
challenge. Right. The infamous Vandy Whistler. But Braylon Wimmer, one of those veteran guys, man, that again I say is a glue guy in that leadoff spot. I think he's a spark plug with this offense, and the offense sort of goes as he goes. When he's swinging it well, it seems like they all swing it well, right? So I think Braylon Wimmer is one. And then Cole Messina, the Gamecocks catcher, who normally bats in the 5-hole or so. I kind of look at him as the heart and soul of this ball club, right? An emotional leader, a leader in the clubhouse. And again, he's one of those guys that Mark Kingston talked about in the preseason. They expected to make a major jump from that freshman to sophomore campaign. And I think he has beautifully. I think there's still some things left to be desired in regards to defensively, specifically throwing out base runners, because if you look at the numbers, the Gamecocks have not done a great job in doing that, but he's been really good offensively. Again, another big power bat, but just a great teammate, a teammate guy, right? He's going to get his hacks off, but when he gets down in the count 0-2 or gets into a pitcher's count, he's going to fight and try to find any way to get on base. And the big at bat that stood out to me earlier this season, I know it's a small thing to a lot of people, but he gets hit by a pitch and he gets just as fired up like he just hit a home run. South Carolina's either trying to mount a rally or they're tied or something. I can't exactly remember, but he just really, to me, serves as the heart and soul of this team. Had a big home run against Mississippi State late in game 1 of that one that helped lead them to victory. So he's come up with some big knocks this year. So if you're not going with the obvious guys, the Casases, the Ethan Petrys, I think Wimmer and Messina are two guys that normally they look to when they're clicking, the offense clicks. And, especially Wimmer there in that leadoff spot at the top, right? Your leadoff guy gets going. It just makes it really, really tough on a pitching staff, especially when you have a guy like Wimmer that's got the athleticism and the speed that he has, right? I mean, you guys don't know all about that with Enrique Bradley getting on the base pass and just making life hell for pitchers. So anytime you can get that guy on consistently, you feel like you've got the upper hand. So again, I'll say Wimmer and Messina, I think, are two guys that I think if they have good weekends, I think South Carolina's going to be in a really good position.
I will say too, another question for you, because obviously you're the Gamecock expert. I haven't watched a ton of South Carolina games. I did watch the Friday game against LSU, and I feel like Ethan Petry's highlights are on everybody's Twitter feed. I mean, anytime the guy hits a home run, I mean, it's posted everywhere, deservedly so. What is South Carolina's offensive strategy at the plate? Because I'm just sort of looking through their stats. Typically now with baseball, whenever you look in the major leagues, guys who hit home runs are cool with striking out. It's all about getting the ball in the air, all about getting the ball in play, popping the ball up, no line drives. But whenever I look at this South Carolina team, I mean, I think leading the nation in home runs. But tell me a little bit more about how they are at the plate, because it looks like, I mean, Ethan Petry strikes out only 18% of the time. You talked about Cole Messina strikes out only 17.1% of the time. Yeah. I mean, these are guys that are getting it done at the plate, but are also getting on the bases, aren't striking out, aren't having poor at-bats. Is this sort of an aggressive swing early team, or they take pitchers deep into the count, or is it a mix of both?
I think it's a bit of a mix of both, but I tell you what, the first thing I thought of when you said that was I just think of the word patience. The difference in this year's lineup versus years past, because it feels like under Kingston, they've always been able to hit home runs. I'll take you back to 2021, right, when you had Brady Allen and Wes Clark and those guys were launching homers. Wes Clark was kind of like the Ethan Petry. Granted, he wasn't a freshman, but a guy that had like 20 home runs, it seemed like, when we got to SEC play. And, he pulled off, but that team hit a lot of bombs, right? But the big thing with them is when they weren't hitting home runs, again, it was truly just like that feast or famine type of mentality, and you didn't hit the long ball. That was the only way they had to score. That was the only bullet they had in the chamber. This year I feel like what Monte Lee has brought, because there has obviously been a major shift and a major difference in the approach, right? You can talk about all the new players they brought in and guys getting a year older, but the entire philosophy, to me, you look at it, it's just completely different. Again, I think it's patience. I think it's patience. Granted, they pick and choose their spots when they want to be aggressive. I don't think South Carolina, I mean, heck, you look at the Mississippi State series, in 2 games in a row, Braylon Wimmer on the first pitch of the game goes yard. So, it just, to me, the best way I could summarize what the approach is, I think it's guys that are going up there with a plan, right? If they're going up there with a plan, they look comfortable. It looks like a group of veteran hitters that sort of know what's going on. They're not really surprised by a whole lot, right? Of course, power is a staple of this lineup. And I think Mark Kingston has said before, and he embraces power as a staple of Gamecocks baseball, right? Talking about speaking on the Ray Tanner teams. And when the Gamecocks have been at their best, they've hit a lot of home runs, right? They just had big, strong, powerful hitters that can hit home runs. But the problem in the past has been, again, you've been sort of a one-trick pony, and that was the only thing you had in your arsenal. This year, this team, they're taking hit by pitches, man. They're taking walks. They're not swinging at bad pitches. They're not swinging themselves in the bad counts. And I think that's why you're seeing so many home runs, because where South kind of maybe last year, 2 years ago, what have you, would have been 1-1 or 0-2, all of a sudden they're 2-0. And you guys know the difference between a 1-1 and a 2-0 count, man. It just makes all of the difference in the world when you know a pitcher's got to come in your wheelhouse, and they got a bunch of guys that just are not missing mistakes. They just don't miss mistakes, right? And then you got a guy like Ethan Petry, one of his home runs against LSU wasn't that bad of a pitch, man. It was like a low and in breaking ball, and he just golfs it out in the left field, right? So you combine a bunch of patient hitters that are relaxed, they have a plan, they're big, strong guys, and they've got a ton of talent. And I think you're putting yourself in a lot of really good positions, right? They're like any other lineup. They strike out a lot, but like you mentioned, I don't even think that's a South Carolina baseball thing. I think that's
everywhere.
Sort of ingrained. It's ingrained in the culture of baseball now, right? Like,
it's a baseball thing.
Right. You sacrifice the strikeout numbers for the home runs. And at this point, if your team is striking out single digits on average, like, you're really good. You know what I mean? Like, no longer are the days where, you have 1 or 2 strikeouts in a game and you're just consistently putting the ball in play. Like, strikeouts are going to happen, but you sort of live with that for the power numbers that you see. But again, I think what this team's doing so differently that's benefiting them, it's much more patience at the plate, getting themselves in good counts. They're excited and more than willing to take the hit by pitches. They're more than willing to take the walk. And so you're seeing a lot of traffic on the base pass. So maybe in the past, too, where those were solo homers, you're seeing them be 2-run and 3-run homers. And again, guys, as you all know, those things, they add up really, really quickly.
Yeah, I had my one question that I really wanted to ask, and Trevor kind of stole it right there. But I was going to lead into the stats of, the Gamecocks lead the nation with 76 home runs but they're 62nd in the nation. And it's kind of grasping at straws at this point, but 62nd in the nation in batting average, but they're 3rd in the nation, I believe, in walks, 4th in the nation in hit by pitches, 5th in the nation in on base percentage. And so I'll kind of shift my question a little bit since we kind of just ran through all those stats, but does the lower batting average at all give you a little bit of a concern, or is that just kind of the nature of the beast, a walk, strikeout, or home run seeming to be the major theme of baseball at this point?
Well, I mean, listen, I think when you're facing the type of arms you see on a weekend in, weekend out basis in the SEC, I think South Carolina, it's funny. I was about to say they still have a lot to prove, which every weekend in the SEC you have a lot to prove. But I mean, we just saw South Carolina go up against Paul Skeens and tattoo him. I mean, 100 miles an hour. They did not give a damn. They weren't intimidated. They were not phased, right? So who knows? Maybe as the competition gets better, they'll get better and they'll rise to the occasion, right? I think that's been sort of the knock on Vanderbilt as well. Like, well, who have you played? Have you played the best of the best in the SEC? And so this is a big weekend for you guys as well, because I know that gets just really annoying to hear, because it's like, we're 11-1. Like, what more can we do? Like, South Carolina, we're 9-2. Like, we play who we play and we beat them. You know what I mean? So, but back to the batting average thing, is it a concern? It's not something that's keeping me up on a nightly basis, but, I'd be lying to you if I said that it isn't something that, as we get more into postseason play, and it'll just be all about almost a shift in perspective, where in the sense of, like, you don't want to abandon power, but productivity becomes more valuable than power at that point, right? Like, when you're in Hoover, you're in a regional, you're in a super, you're in Omaha, it's all about trying to manufacture runs and scrap runs together, right? You get in a 2-0 count, you get ahead, whatever. You're a really good hitter. You want to get your hack off, fine. But you got to know when to be a teammate. You got to know when you can't strike out. You got to know when we need to move that guy from second to third. You got to know when to get that guy in from third, less than 2 outs. Like, you got to be great situationally, right? There's a reason, guys, that when I talk football, I'll give my keys to the game, and we'll do that on a every weekend basis. They're the same every weekend. Pitch well, play great defense, and timely hitting. Timely hitting, not just hitting, timely hitting. So the batting average statistic, I mean, you don't want to be last in the conference, but dude, I mean, like, I hate to bring them up again, but we'll just say that orange team, look at them last year. Is all those power numbers and those high averages, that's all fine and dandy. But if you're not getting knocks when they mean the most, what does it matter? You're not going to get very far, right? That's something that Vanderbilt has been really good at over the years. It seems like when they need to play small ball, they need to get a big knock. They do that better than anybody in college baseball, damn near. So, the average doesn't greatly concern me. And I think this team has shown, like you mentioned, the hit by pitches, the walks. They've shown at times when they needed to have productive at-bats, they've done so. But, I mean, I think that's where, the area of emphasis will be for me, is just in games like this against Vandy, and now you're going to play Florida. You're going to play that orange team. You're going to play the best of the best, right? The competition is just getting better and better and better. You still have that home run ball in your back pocket. You have that. When you're going up against these pitchers, these best pitchers in the country, are you able to be productive against them? Because, sometimes, like, Vandy's Friday night guy, Florida's Friday night guy, if he's on, there ain't a whole lot you can do, man. Like you just got to be able to try to scrap 2-3 runs and pray your guy's better than their guy. So, it's not something I'm overly concerned about, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Thanks again, Chris, for taking the time here with us. And I know Billy has a couple more before he closes us out here. But I know we've mostly talked about South Carolina's offense. And I think I've said it on the podcast many times, but the baseball programs in the country that go in with the expectation every year of being a contender, either the offense falls apart, the pitching falls apart, or you win the national championship. There's no in between. So for South Carolina this year, we focused on offense. But if you had to place a bet, is South Carolina's offense going to be the problem in postseason play later on? Is the pitching going to be the issue? Or is this team bound for a national championship?
Wow, it's crazy, isn't it, to be talking about that? It's just crazy because, again, I picked this team in the preseason. And I was a little bit guarded in the preseason, right? I didn't let myself get too high. It was one of those things where I was like, you got to show me first.
Good fan.
I just realistic, man. Just realistic. I've had
we could never.
Yeah. I've had my heart broken too many times, but after going 27 and 28, Billy, you kind of learn to humble yourself a little bit. So, I'll just say this. I think this team, the Noah Hall injury news, if it does come out that he's out for the season, that one really hurts you. But it's not about is South Carolina good enough to get to Omaha. They are. Is Vandy good enough to get to Omaha? They are. I mean, there's a lot of teams in the SEC. I could just run down the list and be like, are they good enough to get to Omaha? Yes. Will this team be playing its best baseball when it matters most? See, here's the funny thing. If South Carolina goes into a bit of a lull over the next 2 to 3 weekends, Gamecock fans are going to be freaking out, right? And just like the same thing if Vandy does it, any SEC fan base. But I wouldn't hate it. Call me crazy. Because the last thing you want is your team to be peaking, and you get to the postseason, and that's when you get cold, right?
Tennessee balls.
I'm beyond. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't going to mention it by name, so
screw them.
Screw them. I'm beyond the point of, because that was my question early on. Could this? Is this team an Omaha team? I don't know. I think they are. I think they've got the combination of, and see, now they've got the confidence too. We've gotten far enough into the season. This team is extremely confident. Look at the LSU series last week if you don't believe me. After the midweek win against North Carolina, the midweek win against North Carolina, sorry, I got my GPS in my ears screaming at me. But Eli Jersenbeck went on record and said, oh, no, we don't have to play LSU. LSU has to play South Carolina. We're looking forward to it. So, the mindset and the mentality shift has already happened. This team is playing with an edge. They're playing with a belief, and they've got all the pieces. They've got all the tools. They've got immense pitching depth. They've got talent up and down the line. Now, to get to your question and not dodge the question, if this team doesn't get there, I think still it will be the hitting that falters. I just don't see the pitching going anywhere, right? I think the pitching depth is here to stay. Even if you lose Noah Hall, you've got Eli Jones, you've got Eli Jersenbeck, you've got James Hicks, you've got Matthew Becker, all these dudes that can start for you. Guys, the Gamecocks are where they are right now, and Will Sanders hasn't even thrown that well. Their ace hasn't been all that good this year. So if he gets going, watch out, right? So I think if anything does falter, I just think, it's much easier to go cold swinging the stick than it is on the bump, because at the end of the day on the bump, 95. Good shit will play no matter what. It's more so hitting that comes and goes, I think, than the pitching. So I think that would be the thing that would sort of evade South Carolina. But I think at minimum, guys, right now, I'd be willing to say this is a super regional team. And, from there, guys, it's a crapshoot, man. It's so hard to get to Omaha. Who do you get paired up with? There's a lot of things that go into it. But, I'll say, if anything, it's the hitting that will falter. But I like this team's chances, man. They've been proving me wrong at every turn, so why not?
Chris, great stuff so far. This has been awesome. Really looking forward to this series. I got a couple more for you. And we like to ask this for football, before football games, right? The X factor. Right. We like to say this guy's going to be the X factor, or how they pitch, or if they have timely hitting. What's the X factor, right? If South Carolina wins this series, if blank, or Vandy wins this series if blank. Do you look at something in this series and say, man, if this happens, Gamecocks will win, or if this happens, they might be in trouble?
Yeah, I would say for this series, I'll do offensively and defensively. So swinging the bat and on the bump. I'll say swinging the bat, South Carolina will have success if they continue to show patience at the plate and maybe not so much live and die with a home run, but be productive, right? I mean, Vanderbilt's got elite arms, man, left and right. I don't know that you're going to be able to just tee off on them the way you have everybody else this season, although I say that, and I feel like every time I do say that, I went to the game last week against Paul Skeens, man. I was hyping him up, right, talking about he's all-world, everything, and I mean, my God, Carolina just turned around 100 like it was batting practice. So, but I think that focus on, productivity, right? I think there's going to be a lot of low-scoring games, close ball games, and, the team that's able to get that runner in from third, less than 2 outs, get that runner over to third, less than 2 outs, right? Hit the ball to the right side. Just do those little things. That's the team that's going to come out victorious. So I think if this team offensively, productive at bats, and then on the bump, man, I think it comes down to the bullpen. I mean, you saw last weekend against LSU, Cade Austin gives up the grand slam. Carolina should have won that series or could have won that series 2-0. And, unfortunately, Gavin Casas hits a big home run. I think the starting pitching will be there. It's just all about your guys in the bullpen being consistent. We all know they have the talent. They all throw hard. They've all got good stuff. But there can't be a lapse in concentration or a lapse in judgment, if you will. Also, keeping Enrique Bradfield off of the base paths, because South Carolina has not been able to really throw out anybody stealing. And so if he gets on, it might be an automatic triple, like literally. So that man alone could kill you. So again, offensively, I think a focus on productivity, timely hitting, like I mentioned. I know it's so cliche, but I just always come back to that. And then on the bump, I think the focus for me is just on the bullpen. I think your starting rotation, even without Noah Hall, is going to be really good and give you a chance. But late innings, Vandy's the home team at Hawkins Field. It's a never say die club with Tim Corbin. You're going to have to put it into another gear this weekend if you want to take 2 of 3. And, Vandy, just because you're up 3-4 runs, they're not going to quit in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. So they've got to be even better than normal, I think, this weekend.
Chris, this should be a sellout, of course, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. How many Gamecock fans are you expecting? I know there's not a big allotment, right? It seats nearly 4,000. So are you expecting many Gamecocks, like maybe a football trip in Nashville this weekend?
Well, Gamecocks always travel. I think the really interesting kicker is that South Carolina's spring game is on Saturday, right? I was even considering making the trip to Nashville with the spring game, and we've got stuff going on with content for that. Of course, I'll be locked into all 3 baseball games, but I'm sure there'll be some garnet and black there, but no matter what, guys, it'll be a great environment for SEC baseball, and I can't wait for it. I mean, again, this is how South Carolina Vanderbilt's supposed to be. 2 great programs, 2 of the most proud programs with history and tradition in the SEC, and to see 4 versus 6 and to see these 2 great teams go at it, man, it's a lot of fun. It reminds me again of those Ray Tanner days and what Tim Corbin's built. I mean, I think Gamecock fans have got nothing but respect for him, and anytime you take on his ball clubs, they are going to test you fundamentally, and it's going to be a fight for all 27 innings. So I'm looking forward to a great 3-game series.
Yet all 3 games are on SEC Network Plus. Where's ESPN2? Where's ESPNU? I mean, this is a top 10 matchup, Chris. Come on.
College baseball is still criminally under-televised, my friend, and undercovered and
ridiculous.
Everything. So, hey, it's up to people. It's up to people like you guys and myself to carry the torch for college baseball. I say we give them one hell of a show this weekend.
Oh, we will. And we just did with you. So thank you so much for coming on. Again, Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show, best Gamecock coverage on the internet. Got a podcast Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Go look them up on Twitter. Of course, we'll tag you. We'll get this out. Chris, enjoy it this weekend. Enjoy the spring game. Thanks for taking the time, brother.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thank y'all so much. Best of luck this weekend.
Thanks, Chris.
Best of luck.